Hi everyone, thanks for having me. I'm very pleased to talk in front of you today. We'll try to combine different topics we talked about this morning. So my name is Jean-Charles Cabelguen. I am the Chief of Innovation and Adoption at iExec. And I would like to this morning, we talked a lot about different topics addressing AI and blockchain and how they can combine together. So some topic has already been addressed, but I would like to try to offer a different angle regarding this field. Just before that, I want to introduce iExec in order to explain why we are here talking in front of you today. So we have 15 years of experience in grid computing and distributed computing. We founded the company a little bit more than 2 years ago, and we did an ICO in April 2017 to found the company. Today, 24 people are working on the topic, and what we focus on is really to have an international awareness. So we are working with Intel, with Alibaba Cloud, with IBM Cloud, in order to address exciting topics, exciting projects. The last demo that has been showcased were at Mobile World Congress and at RSA, and that would be the two use cases I will present to you today. So this is the agenda. We'll talk a little bit about AI, my vision about AI, blockchain, about the combination of AI and blockchain. I will showcase two demos about how AI and blockchain could collaborate together to make sense. We talked about medtech and we talked about smart city and IoT. And then I will share with you some forecasts. And I will be more than pleased to have challenging questions during the talk and at the end also. Feel free to interrupt me, it will be a pleasure. So when we talked about artificial intelligence, there is two types of artificial intelligence, the soft AI and the hard AI. The soft AI is mostly AI that is trained based on data sets, and the hard AI, it's AI that is able to learn from the environment, so without initial input. So today we are mostly on the first, concerned by the first one, on the production part, and for that one, data is key. So we are used to hear that data is a digital gold. But the last year, like 5 or 10 years ago, the big word was about big data. The interest of big data is to find patterns inside data. And AI is to create behaviors based on those data. What we also observe the last years and what is developing for 2019 and for 2020, it's the focus on edge processing and edge computing. The idea is to put some intelligence on the field, not inside cloud data center. And the first reason was there is so much information coming from IoT devices that should be sent to data center that the cost is really, really high. It's really also complex to assure the security when you have to transit a lot of information. The second part is that some of this information is not valuable. So the idea, in order to optimize the processes, is to create some intelligence on the field. I talked about soft AI. Today, when we talked about AI, it's not really AI, it's soft AI. And the last Turing Award, I think it was like yesterday or 2 days ago, it's about deep learning, and that's a good illustration about that part. And because for now, hard AI is mostly about R&D. There is no hard AI that is close to be in production, and maybe in 5 or 10 years it will be different. So about blockchain, maybe to wrap up a little bit, what is a blockchain? What is nice is that we have the answer in the question. A blockchain is a chain of blocks, and each block is a register of events, of digital events. And why it's working? It's working because of two fields, computing science and game theory. We talked a lot about the technical part of blockchain, so computing science, but we do not talk about the incentivization part of why blockchain is working. And it's really key in order to validate the usage and the security also of the network based on blockchains. Because what we want to do through game theory is to motivate people to well behave and to have processes that will be more hurtful when they not well behaved. For example, at iExec, when someone wants to provide some computing power to run an algorithm, you have to put some staking on the table. And if the algorithm is well executed, it will have back his stake and it will be paid for the execution. If the algorithm is not well executed, it will lose his stake, and the stake will be distributed to the people who have well behaved during the process. And when you have a question regarding is my business is in need of blockchain technology, the only answer should be about trust and proof. If you want to add proof and trust inside your business, maybe blockchain could be a useful tool to help you to generate a new business. If not, if you are working inside the same company, dealing with people who trust each other, or dealing with business units that trust each other, maybe you don't need to blockchain. But when you have to interact with different business units coming from different countries, or with different companies that do not trust each other, in that case, it could be good to have a blockchain layer in your processes. Here are some trends regarding this year and the coming one. Scalability, it's a huge topic. For years, we have talked about scalability issue regarding blockchain, and it's still a current topic. We have different solutions to address that topic. The improvement of consensus, sidechain solution. The idea of sidechain solution is to aggregate some events outside of the main chain, and at the end of the day, or after like 1,000 transactions, to put it on the main chain. Off-chain computing is also an interesting solution to address a scalability issue. The idea of off-chain computing is to put everything that is really heavy in compute outside of the blockchain, but to have a process in order to allow the interaction between what is made off-chain and what is made on-chain. The other topic that is common this month is the competition between different types of blockchain. I'm not here to give the final answer. What I like to do to have an idea regarding what blockchain will be present in the future is to evaluate where are the good developers. And I think that will be the answer, because in 4 or 5 years, the main blockchain will be about where are the best developers. We are getting closer to the production. We have seen this morning some projects that are already in production, and I think 100%, almost 100% of big companies and corporates are working on POC, proof of concept, or MVP regarding blockchain project. So we are observing a shift regarding how those companies are managing their blockchain project. Like 1 year ago, it was more about observing the trend, and this year it's really about recruiting people in order to create teams dedicated to this topic. What we also observing, it's the evolution of standards. For example, I'm chair at the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance, and what we are doing there is to create technical specification to implement blockchain-based project inside companies. And I think it's really important in computing to have standards in order to create an homogeneity regarding what is implemented. What else we are also observing is the raising of the number of stablecoins. A lot of topics about that issue, and I think it's an echo to the classic financial system. But it will be interesting to see how stablecoin and classic financial system will interact in the future. So AI and blockchain. AI for AI or blockchain for blockchain is a nonsense. These technologies are transversal technologies that need to address specific needs, specific business issues. And we are observing an evolution of teams that before were dedicated to one project, and today AI teams or blockchain teams are starting to be more that in a transversal layer inside a big corporate or big companies. And I think it's an important observation because it's relevant regarding the maturity and the possibility of integration of different verticals for these companies. As I said before, digital gold, it's considered being the data. But what blockchain will provide for AI is really a way of scaling the aggregation of having those data, the scaling and the decentralization. Before, a company has a data set that has been created by the company. But in the future, thanks to a blockchain-based solution, we can imagine having company using data set coming from different companies. It could be competitors, it could be partners, and using blockchain in the process of managing the access of these data sets. I will give you a concrete example later. It's the same for computing resources. All of us have one computer at least and one smartphone. During the night, we don't use our computer. It's the same for a lot of companies. So we can also see that blockchain could be a useful tool in order to provide computing resources, for example, computation, in a larger scale. It's very painful for AI startup to burn 20 to 30 to 40% of the raise capital to companies in order just to train their business model, their AI models. And so it's a pain for the startups. And having in decentralizing the access of computing power, we can address this issue. The same for reinforcement. I said previously that data sets are key, but reinforcement of AI model, it's also really important. The reinforcement system is to say that we train once AI model, and then we confront the AI model to the reality or concrete use case, and we reinforce the AI model after adding a new data sets. As the same, we can imagine also having this paradigm where different companies collaborate together in order to provide data sets that are cleaned, that has been detoxed in a certain way. And what we also imagine, and this morning we talked about the monetization of AI models, it's to manage through the blockchain, to manage the access of AI model that has been trained. So AI model, it's costly because there is a lot of engineering process. There is also a lot of computation process inside the idea of training it. So it's possible to, it would be, I think, valuable to monetize AI model, already a trained model. But for that, we need to validate how we give access to this AI model. And blockchain could also be a solution for that. I will, doing the use cases part, I will explain how. So the idea is really to say that the tracking of providers will create the kind of new economy where we can focus on trust and reputation through blockchain, tracking every type of input, every type of output, and giving a ranking of the contributor that are part of the system. And that's also an answer to what type of incentive we can have in this decentralized organization. And we talked also previously about Oracle, hardware Oracle. And what we will also start to see is decentralized Oracle, to have a solution where we can provide feedbacks that are validated through different processes, hardware processes, but also software processes, in order to validate that we are able to build a bridge between the physical world and the digital world, and this build should be really secure. So before going to illustrating my presentation, what we are doing at iExec is we are building a decentralized marketplace for computing resources. And by computing resources, I mean data sets, application, software, decentralized application, AI model, and computing power. And the idea is to have this paradigm where different devices, different companies can interact together in order to have a new type of organization. And we are not doing that just in using blockchain. Blockchain, it's a part of the stack. What we are doing is we are leveraging different technology. Blockchain is one of them. We're also working on off-chain, on-chain consensus. The idea is to managing and to put on blockchain what is happening outside the blockchain. We're working also on security, mostly using trusted execution environment. I will have some slide about that topic. And also on distributed computing, because at the end, we really have to have this dynamic network where different people and companies can collaborate together. So to address the part regarding use cases, we talked about the training of AI for medical purpose. So it's easy to see the interest of mixing AI and healthcare. We have some slides this morning about that topic, so I won't spend too much time here. But the issue we have to address is trust in the management of ownership, the security of data, the processing of the data, and the regulatory part, the legal part. I think this part is maybe the most easiest part because we know all the different rules and on all the different laws inside countries. So what we have today, it's a gap between on your left the hospitals and patients, and on your right the pharmaceutical company or company that want to use the data that are inside the hospitals. So we have a gap here, and to bring that gap, we need to mix different technology. Blockchain is not the only answer. So what we would like to do, for example, is to have access to different type of data sets, to train AI on those data sets, to give access to this AI to hospitals that do not have the surgeon specialized in a specific pathology, and also to have this process of reinforcement. So what we are doing at iExec to address that solution is to mix blockchain, trusted execution environment. POCO, it's an algorithm managing the consortium managing off-chain and on-chain computing and distributed computing. I will just talk a little bit about trusted execution environment. So trusted execution environment, it's a mainstream technology. It's not well known, but it's really mainstream. It's like a secure bubble, a secure area inside the CPUs. The idea is to not have a weak point during the process of sharing information, because it's easy to encrypt data, to send data in a network. That part is really secure. Even if someone intercepts the data set, he won't be able to do much with that. But at one point, you have to decrypt the data set in order to execute them. So what we are doing is the decryption part is made inside a secure area, and this secure area is by itself encrypted. So it's a hardware encryption that is a new layer of security to address software, to increase the security for software encryption. And it's mainstream because here we have OpenSpec from Berkeley, Eve the solution from AMD, here the solution for ARM, and here the solution from Intel. Intel has started working on that topic more than 10 years ago. Since 2015 and 2016, all the new processors integrate by default trusted execution environment, and for Intel it's called Intel EGX. So for now, it seems that this chip manufacturer is the most advanced regarding that topic. So what we have presented at RSA it's a security event in the US. We have presented the idea of training an AI model on brain scan. We have like 1,000 brain scan with 1,000 diagnostic. We train the AI model, and then we send the AI model that has been trained to the company that has paid for the process. So it's what we are doing here. But what is interesting here is that the data sets stay inside hospitals infrastructure. The AI model is sent to the hospital infrastructure. We train the AI model there, and then we send back the AI models that is trained to the company that has paid for the service. So at no time the company has access to the data set. So it's really secure, and so it could be compliant to a lot of countries. And the idea here is to have this paradigm of renting data. Before, it was possible to give data, it was possible to sell data, but the paradigm of renting data was not possible. By renting, I mean giving access to data by whitelisted application, whitelisted software. And this software can be trained on those data sets, but they can't copy past the data set. And everything is secure from end to end, and everything is encrypted, even the execution and the training of the AI during the process. So we have here 3 types of business cycles: the renting of data, the renting of AI. We can imagine that this AI model could be rent to an hospital that do not have a brain surgeon, for example. And after, we can have also a new business cycle that would be a payment to reinforce the AI model. And as I said, it's not one technical solution to address this issue. It's a mix of different technical solutions. The second use case, it's about intelligent network for smart city. So here we have, can you put the video on? So here we have the idea of, in the future, for smart city, having thousands of manufacturers. It's not that one. It's that one. So we can imagine in the future having thousands of manufacturers selling devices to companies, and those devices are in cities, smart cities. So how to validate the collaboration between those devices? So the idea is to have 2 robots that are lost in a parking place, 2 autonomous vehicles. They send the information that they are lost. A rescuer is sent to map the area, map the parking place, to send the map to the lost robots, and the lost robot will use the map to come back to the base. So it's what is interesting here is that we are using blockchain in 3 steps. The first one is the authentication. We want to be sure that the robots that send the map is a good robot, The map is a good map. It won't send the lost robot far away. The second part is to measure the services exchange between those robots, because beyond those robots there are companies. And that is the third step. We want also to automatize the reward process or the payment process, because what we have is this idea of having a dynamic network. Is it possible to come back to the slides? So the idea is having a dynamic network where different devices, connected devices, should collaborate together, but behind those devices there are companies. And it's really important to have also the reward process validating the payment by the end of the day. So what we presented during the process is the 5G, to have the communication layer between those robots. It was nanobands. IntelliGX is the security layer. Everything is encrypted, even the information saying we are lost. Everything is encrypted. And we have blockchain as the interoperability layer. The idea is to be able to have different robots that do not know each other that can collaborate in the future. Because when you will have dynamic networks, we will have not finite amount of robots or autonomous vehicle or sensors inside this network, because some software will be tampered, so we'll have to maintenance them, we'll have to put them out of the network, so we have to replace them by new sensors. So how to automatize the process of authentication? That's really, really important. The idea also, so for authentication, we can also imagine for autonomous vehicle, it will be critical to be sure that the information that are received by the autonomous vehicle are good information. The proof of contribution is also to measure the service between this autonomous vehicle, and at the end, the reward process. So here are 3 forecasts to end this presentation. I talked about soft AI. We need trusted inputs for soft AI. We need trusted data. And I think we'll see a new economy of companies providing services, devices, hardware devices, for example, in order to be able to create a secure environment where Oracle, software and hardware Oracle can collaborate together, to have this reputation ranking of providers and to have also the reinforcement ranking when providers are providing useful information. The second forecast is about the need of records. When we will have hard AI that is able to evolve based on the environment, it will be critical to record how this AI will interact with people and with other AI. So I think blockchain also will be a valuable asset to have this immutable record when we will have this ranking of reputation regarding how hard AI has evolved in the classic environment. And the third forecast, it's about smart city. Often when we talk about smart city, I think it's not really smart. It's really about connecting device in a seamless way. But I think we have to go further. The idea of going further is to have intelligent system, because these devices should create business situation where they complement each other. So we'll have intelligent devices using AI on the edge, but we should also to have a system to manage the interoperability and the collaboration between those devices. So to conclude, I would like to say that we are just starting to apprehend how the sharing economy and how the decentralization, the technical solution for decentralization, how building bridge to AI, blockchain, but it's also true for other type of field. And what will be really important is to focus and to forecast what type of new business model we can provide. The renting of data, for example, is not easy to apprehend. But when we think about marketplace of data of mobility, for example, where each of us can provide in a free will some geographical information and being rewarded and pay for that, it could be really, really interesting. The same for big companies. And for that, we need to have this infrastructure that are developed by European players that are able to play on international level. Thanks for your time.
I have a few questions, and I will start with two. The first one is you have mentioned the idea of a decentralized oracle.
Decentralized?
Decentralized oracle. Yeah. So let's imagine we have maybe an oracle that gives us a room temperature or an environment temperature. And I understood what you mean is that we would not have one oracle, yeah, but more, like 5, let's say. Yeah. So let's say they do not agree, because this is when we have a problem, when there's a disagreement. So what would happen then? How will help us the situation? This is my first question.
Yeah, so for the oracle, I think indeed we'll have a different type of oracle that should collaborate together, and sometimes for sure they will disagree. So we'll have to have this algorithm process to compare the result of 2 or more than 2 oracles. So we can imagine having a situation where 2 oracles should provide the same output. If the output is not the same, we have to compare these 2 oracles with the third oracle. So by chance, the third can provide the same result than one of the first oracles. And if it's not the case, we can add a fourth oracle. But the idea is not to say that we need to have 10 oracles in order to provide the same input, but to have processes in order to guarantee that the quality of the input is really secure. So we can also have having different oracles. For example, an oracle that is a temperature sensor, an oracle that is image recognition sensor. So if you have a temperature sensor that is really secure, we can imagine having someone being in front of the temperature sensors with a light in order to artificially increase the temperature. But if you have an oracle with that is like a camera that is able to say that, okay, there is a situation that is not normal in that situation, though we do not use that input inside the process of putting information to the network. So the idea is not to say that there is no one answer. We'll have a complementary of solution in order to address what should be done. And during the process, we'll have also algorithm in order to compare the result and to rank at the end also the sensors. Because we can imagine that one sensor is tempered and he gives today a false result, And if tomorrow it gives also a false result, maybe there could be a trigger to have a maintenance interventions, etc.
My second question goes on the topic that you have just mentioned, of the use case of the trading of data concerning the movements of people. Remember, you made a remark like people with their smartphones would record their movements, and this could become data that would be traded. And currently, the provisions concerning data protection have this idea that at the moment where I give consent, I know already the purpose for the use of this data. And I would like to know how you see this working when people then trade data where the purpose is not initially known by the data subjects.
Yeah, so that's an important question. Today, we already give a lot of information to Google, for example, and we do not have information about how it is used. But I think in the future, we'll have kind of data banks, the same like classic banks. When we put money in our bank, we will receive by the end of the year some interest, financial interest. And I think it will be the same for data. We'll put data in the data banks. We don't know exactly how they will use the data, but we agree to give access to the data. If we want to validate what type of information we want to give, I think it's really easy to validate the level of transparency we want to address. And we can also say we want to give our information only for green business, for example. So what will we do, this type of data banks, is we'll put our data there, and at the end of the year or at the end of the month, we'll have an interest based on the profit that those companies, those marketplaces for the data has made in renting, because I think renting is key, in renting our data. And because why I say renting is key, because in that way you can keep the ownership of your data. Yes, there is another question here.
So are you basically saying we're going to change GDPR in the next few years? Because, I mean, finality is like is one of the core elements of GDPR, and what you're suggesting goes entirely against that. So it requires basically changing GDPR, which took, what, 10 years to be done?
Yeah, no, the idea is not to change GDPR, it's to be compliant to GDPR. That's the first idea. The idea of, so we have for sure to address that topic, but the idea of giving access to data sets in a secure enclave where your data set could stay in your smartphone, for example, is compliant to GDPR. The idea of saying that anonymity could be validated inside the process, it's also compliant to GDPR. So there is a lot of technical solution today that can provide compliancy to GDPR. Nevertheless, I also try to not think only through the European point of view. What is done in the US and what is done in Asia, it's also really interesting. So I think some companies will provide this type of bank of data marketplace of the mobility, for example. If for some regulatory limitation, those companies are not in Europe, it could be painful. But yeah, I think we are going that way. And what is really interesting is that today we are already providing a lot of information, but we are not aware about how those information are used, and we are not rewarded also to do that. Yes, Peter.
How you know if you're getting the right data? You get so much data coming in. How you know you pick out the right one?
Yeah, it's the same like for sensors. The idea is to have also like a ranking of providers. If a provider it's a good provider, maybe the price of this data will be higher than a provider that is new inside the network. So the idea is to have this e-reputation. It's not the reputation of someone, it's a reputation of data sets. And behind these data sets, there is people or companies.
So you're paying for the good data. Whoever provides you with good data, they get what they get back. How you tokens or how you?
It's iExec. It's a technical layer in that use cases. At the end, we'll have clients that will use our technology to create new business models. And reward could be a solution like a coupon. It could be tokens. It could be also cashback for subscription services. It could be cash also directly.
Maybe one last question. Yes, please.
Yeah, sorry. I understand there is going to be a huge market for IoT devices monitoring each other. So that might be more interesting than the blockchain to work for then. But if you look at decentralized oracles, wouldn't it be easier to just regulate it with a legal binding way, like a contract, where you just sign who is responsible for doing what and couple liabilities to it, rather than having monitors watching temperature scanners and everything else? It's word I actually missed in your presentation, apart from one time mentioning regulatory, like with data from hospital, from patients, a lot of legal repercussions there, and it's not just a technical solution, it's especially a legal solution. Also the Oracle, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. As I said previously, we are a technical layer. We are not a business layer for implementing those projects. And but indeed, we are observing that it's really important to be compliant to some regulatory. That being said, it's important to have that in mind, but it will be the old way, because in the future, I think we'll have technical solutions that are by default compliant to regulatory framework. And that's what is important, and that's why also we are in different standardization, is to develop specification that are taking in consideration the regulatory to some countries, for example, in order that by default the technical stack, the technical spec would be compliant. And I think that's really important to develop the technical part, but to keep in mind that at the end there will be big companies that will use them. That's why we are involved at EEA, Enterprise Ethereum Alliance. And so I see your point for sure.
So there was one last question you wanna, yes, please.
Thank you. So my question relates to one of the use cases that you presented, although I understand that's just a potential implementation.
It's already working.
Oh, it's already working. Okay, sorry.
It's not working in the production phase.
Okay, my question relates to the renting of data for training of AI. So you said that basically the AI would be trained and you will not get in touch with or get access to the real data that the AI is trained on. What does it do to the explainability of AI actions or decisions if you cannot go back to the data set that's basically from which the AI learned? Because it's still in evolution, and that means that sometimes we have to go back and reflect on how the decision was made. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely the idea is to reach a paradigm where it's possible to trade computing resources as a commodity, like rice. So we have to reach this granularity that gives us the possibility to trade it in a really flexible way. So like a paper task. And the idea is to have this solution for your question. Is to have the capacity to have a paper task solution, so to train the AI, but also to analyze the data sets, because we have also this motivation incentive of providing quality data set with the ranking. And it's as it's public, it could be public if it's not a consortium. It's easy to see what has been used, how the AI has react after. And that's why also I have added the reinforcement process inside the business iteration.
Okay, thank you very much, Jean-Charles. Thank you for your questions.
Thanks.